Let's go ahead and shift to college football. A lot of changes this year, conference changes, and then, of course, we're going to have the 12-team playoff. Has that changed your preseason prep? Have you been able to find any futures, whether win totals or maybe conferences, looking forward to this season?
I've made a couple of win total bets. One of them, the number is completely moved. So I hate even saying I hate being like the past poster guy. Like back in early May, I did play Syracuse over 6.5, and that number now is moved to 7. I think 7.5 even in some spots. But the one that's still out there that I've seen is UCLA under 5.5. I think the Bruins have an opportunity to be really bad this year. Unfortunately, I think they've lost so many key players from the defense and the lines of scrimmage, and going into now the Big Ten being kind of depleted up front on both sides of the ball, kind of an unsettled quarterback situation. Dante Moore left, and other guys left, and I believe Garbers is back, but I'm not sure that that's definitely a difference maker going into the Big Ten. They got a stretch early in the year where they have 3 brutal games in a row, and there's a chance you're sitting at 1-3 after 4 games, and before you even really get into the heart of Big Ten conference play and having to make those road trips across the country. So UCLA under 5.5 is a bet that I have made, and I would still bet it at that number. It was funny. I was joking with Chrissy the other day on Twitter. I know how much he loves getting suggestions onto prop bets to make, and I suggested I'd love to get a prop on the combined wins by USC and UCLA this year, because I would love to know what it is, because I would love to bet the under on that, because I think if people do a deep dive on USC's roster, I think they'd be a little bit surprised too at how poor the Trojans might be. But UCLA is the one win total that's still available out there that I'd play. And in terms of winning the national title or so, I still think it's Georgia and Ohio State are the 2 best teams. If there was a Georgia and Ohio State versus the field, I would take Georgia and Ohio State versus the field. I think the teams that you have after that, Oregon and Texas, are probably the 2 teams that most people would mention. The interesting thing, Alex, like you said, for the playoff and expansion in 12 teams, is that if those are the 4 teams people think are going to win, of those 4, 2 of them are going to have to play that 3rd game before the quarterfinals, because the conference champions get the automatic the bye. So you're going to have an ACC champion and a Big 12 champion who aren't as good as to Oregon or Texas, assuming Oregon and Texas wind up not winning the leagues, that they're going to have to play the extra round. They'll be favored in that game. But I'm just curious to see how that pans out once the playoff gets set, with a really good team having to play an extra step to win the national title. It was funny. I was asked the other day too about like an opinion or a thought that's out there where I may not necessarily like agree with it, and I hate being like alumni pessimism here, but this talk about Miami just automatically, because they got Cam Ward and they had a good recruiting class and they had a portal where they brought in some other guys besides Ward at quarterback. Like the thought that Miami's just going to go out there now and be a 10-2 type team, maybe win the ACC, make the playoff. Like, I don't know. Like Miami's a team that's won 10 games in a season once in 20 years. So like we've heard this so often. As an alum, I would love for my alma mater to be back and matter in the national stage, but I think that just this assumption that all because Florida State lost a bunch of guys and Clemson hasn't been the same, that we're just automatically putting them in the SEC championship game and thinking they're going to win the league and make the playoff. That's a dangerous proposition, even as easy as that schedule looks.
I'm with you on that. I still think that's Florida State's league to lose. Yet again, even with obviously changes at quarterback. But Chris, this 12-team playoff. Obviously, we know that one non-Power 4 team is going to be there, and I'm just curious, just looking through, and again, there are a bunch of odds to make the college football playoff out there, but they're actually all Power 4 teams that have odds up right now. I haven't seen anything on the non-Power 4, but when those odds eventually populate, what would be a team that you would potentially look at as the 12th team in that isn't one of the Power Four?
I would think Boise's obviously going to be the team that gets a majority of the looks, and I think they probably should. I haven't dove into take a deeper dive on that yet, but that's a good prop. I like looking at that. I like to see who potentially it could be, but I think just based on who's back and the way Boise finished last year, I would expect Boise to certainly be the favorite or near the top of the favorite list for to be that non-Power 4 team to get in.